How does it feel, Patricia, losing your partner to someone else? What's that like?
These triumphant words came from Betty, my supervisor, and the department manager. Just 2 weeks before my wedding, she stole my partner. Despite committing such a horrible act, Betty showed no remorse. On the contrary, she went out of her way to boast about it to me, using it as a way to assert dominance. She had always been a difficult person, but I never thought she could be this cruel. Shocked and overwhelmed, I couldn't muster a response. Instead, I ran away in tears, unable to face her. As I fled, Betty watched me with a gleeful smile on her face. But 4 years later, the Betty standing before me now had a face flushed red with humiliation and frustration. In this moment, our roles had completely reversed, and Betty was left to live with the regret of her foolish actions for the rest of her life. My name is Patricia, and I'm a 39-year-old ordinary office worker. I don't have many fond memories of past relationships. When I was 26, my boyfriend, who I'd been dating since my first year of college, dumped me. The reason? He cheated on me. When I confronted him after discovering his infidelity, he left me without hesitation. We were together for 7 years. Give me back my time. Wait, if you can dump me this easily, then she must have been the one you really wanted, right? Ugh, how infuriating. I remember yelling that out in frustration after he moved out of the house we had been sharing. But instead of being crushed by the shock of being cheated on, I was furiously angry and surprisingly energetic. Why? Because I'd been cheated on by previous boyfriends too, so in a way, I was used to it. I did wonder if there was something wrong with me that made this happen so often, but eventually, I realized it's always the cheater's fault, no matter the reason. That realization took me a while. I decided to take a break from men and spent several years without dating anyone. That's when a friend, worried about my situation, suddenly invited me to a mixer one day.
The best way to get over heartbreak is to fall in love again.
That's what she said, though looking back, I think she just wanted an excuse to join the mixer herself. Still, being single forever seemed lonely, so I reluctantly agreed to go. That's where I met Thomas.
Patricia, have you been betrayed by a partner too? I have as well. Cheating is absolutely the worst. I would never do something like that.
When the conversation turned to our past relationships, I realized that he, like me, was a victim of infidelity. We immediately hit it off. Cheating really is the worst. Oh, I'd love to keep talking about this. Should we exchange numbers?
Of course. By the way, Patricia, do you like movies? I got some free tickets, but I don't have anyone to go with.
I love watching movies. Let's definitely go. With that, we quickly grew closer, and after the movie ended, Thomas confessed his feelings to me. I met Thomas when I was 29, and we took our time dating for 6 years. Even though we both shared the experience of being victims of infidelity, my own history of being betrayed by so many men made it hard for me to fully trust him.
Do you still not trust me? I get why you'd feel that way, but we've been together for 6 years now. I want to get married and have kids. Thinking about the future, I'd really like to make it official soon.
When Thomas said that, I reflected and realized I might have been doubting him too much. I'm sorry. I guess my past has left me with some trauma. But you're right, Thomas. Let's get married. I'm sorry for making you wait.
Really? That makes me so happy. Let's go pick out a ring right away.
Since we were already living together, the main things left to do for our engagement were buying the ring and planning the wedding. I want a flashy dress.
No way. I want to see you in a simple dress, Patricia.
We had a few small disagreements, but we managed to prepare for the wedding over 6 months. 3 months before the wedding, the engagement ring was finally ready.
It's so beautiful, this engagement ring.
I made him splurge on it. When I wore the ring to work, my coworkers admired it enviously. One of them, who was already married, complained about how her husband had been cheap and bought her a disappointing ring. But your husband helps out with the kids and housework, right? That's what really matters.
Yeah, but still.
Hey, you too, keep it down.
A sudden shout startled me, and I turned to see who it was. It was Betty, the assistant manager of our marketing department, and she looked annoyed.
Don't get all giddy just because you're getting married. Honestly, what's so great about marriage anyway?
She scolded us out of nowhere and stormed off, muttering complaints under her breath. Betty, who's 5 years older than me, is a career-driven woman. She's incredibly competent and had already been promoted to assistant manager by the time she was my age. However, her personality is just a bit problematic.
Betty got rejected again at her latest matchmaking event. That makes it 15 times in a row.
Really?
She always acts like she doesn't care about men, but honestly, no one wants to get married more than she does. I bet she's jealous after hearing about your engagement, Patricia.
As a fellow woman, I can understand the anxiety of feeling pressured to get married, but that doesn't give her the right to take it out on others. Still, since Betty has never been the nicest person, it wasn't exactly surprising when she suddenly yelled at us. She looks down on everyone, convinced she's better at her job than anyone else. Because of that, Betty isn't just disliked in our marketing department, but throughout the company. Maybe it's best not to invite Betty to the wedding. I remembered how, during a team dinner with the marketing department, Betty had gone on a drinking binge right after being rejected at one of her matchmaking events. She caused such a scene that we had to apologize to the restaurant as a group. I decided I couldn't risk her ruining my wedding, so I planned to invite only a select few coworkers. 2 months before the wedding, our company organized a barbecue event. Since families were welcome, I invited Thomas to join me.
Wow, there are a lot of people here.
Most of them are married. We enjoyed the barbecue in a quiet corner of the bustling venue. That's when Betty, her face flushed from drinking, approached us.
Oh my, Patricia, is that the partner I've been hearing about?
Betty, yes, this is my partner, Thomas. Thomas, this is my supervisor, Betty.
It's nice to meet you. Thank you for always looking out for Patricia.
Thomas greeted her with a smile. I anxiously watched, worried that Betty might say something rude to him. However, contrary to my expectations, Betty didn't complain and instead asked Thomas this.
I've been curious for a while now. Is that keychain a limited edition item from a classical concert?
What? Oh, yes, it is. Wait, were you at that concert too, Betty?
Yes, I even bought that same keychain. That concert was truly remarkable, wasn't it?
It turns out Thomas is a fan of classical music. Though I know nothing about it myself, and have never joined him for a concert. And since I never interact with Betty outside of work, I had no idea she was into classical music either. After that, Thomas and Betty completely forgot about me and dove into an animated conversation about classical music.
I can't believe Patricia's supervisor shares the same hobby as me. I'm really surprised. Please make sure to attend the wedding.
I never expected my subordinate's partner to be such a wonderful person. Patricia, you found yourself a great partner.
Betty gave me a fresh, cheerful smile that I had never seen before. I managed to smile back and thank her, though my expression was slightly strained. Honestly, seeing Thomas and Betty hit it off so well didn't sit right with me. But after that, nothing else happened, and I completely forgot about Betty while enjoying my time with Thomas. However, after this barbecue, Thomas started coming home later and later. Since his workplace had strict rules about overtime, this was unusual. Feeling concerned, I decided to ask him about it when he got home. "You've been coming home late recently. Are you okay? It's rare for you to have so much overtime. Has work gotten busier?" I meant it as a casual question, but Thomas looked startled. A moment later, he responded in an unusually harsh tone.
It's none of your business.
"What? Of course, it's my business. We live together."
Why are you so obsessed with my work? Coming at me with all these questions like it's a big deal. Honestly, it's kind of a turn off.
His words left me stunned, my eyes widening in shock. I hadn't meant to pry or act desperate. I was just worried that all this overtime might be exhausting him. But my concern didn't seem to reach him, and he didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. Why did he lash out like that? Maybe he's just stressed from work and getting irritable. The wedding is approaching, and everything is getting hectic. I guess it's understandable. Once the wedding is over, I'll make sure to take good care of him. I thought about this while tidying up the bag Thomas had left out. 2 weeks before the wedding, his late nights continued, and I spent my evenings feeling restless. He must be tired from work. Maybe I will make something warm for him tonight. Wanting to make one of his favorite soups, I went straight to the kitchen after getting home early. About an hour later, just as the soup was ready, I heard the sound of the front door opening. "Hi, you're back earlier than usual today. Dinner will be ready soon."
Patricia, we need to talk.
I greeted Thomas with a smile, but his face was tense and stiff. "What's going on?" I tilted my head in confusion, turned off the stove, and faced him. "What do you need to talk about?"
I want to break up. The wedding is off. I already contacted the venue about canceling it.
"What?" I couldn't comprehend what he was saying, and a faint, empty voice escaped my lips. Ignoring me, he quickly began packing his belongings.
This house is in your name, so I will move out.
"Wait, what's going on? Why are you suddenly breaking up with me?"
This isn't sudden. I've been thinking for a while now that we're not a good match. Even if we got married, it wouldn't work out. That's why I'm ending it.
Thomas gave me a cold, detached look. All I could do was stare at him in shock.
I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later.
With that, he left, closing the door behind him without looking back even once. I couldn't believe the reality unfolding in front of me and spent the entire night sleepless, only to face the next day in a daze. "I have to go to work." Feeling dizzy from exhaustion and the emotional blow, I sluggishly got ready. At work, something completely unexpected awaited me.
I'm getting married.
During the morning meeting, Betty suddenly announced her engagement. On her left hand was a sparkling engagement ring. Everyone in the marketing department was surprised, but in the end, they all clapped to celebrate Betty's news. Still reeling from my abrupt breakup with Thomas, I couldn't bring myself to look at Betty's radiant smile. Maybe I will take a break in the lounge. Throughout the day, I kept making mistakes at work due to my lack of sleep and emotional turmoil. I decided to head to the break room to take a short nap. As I sat there, Betty approached me from behind, looking unusually cheerful.
Oh, Patricia, are you sleep deprived? You look upset. Did something happen?
No, nothing at all.
That's not true, is it? After all, Thomas broke up with you.
The shocking words from Betty's mouth jolted me awake, clearing away both my drowsiness and the lingering shock. How do you know that?
Because Thomas is my partner.
I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. I just moved my lips silently, like a fish out of water. Betty seemed to relish my reaction, grinning as she revealed the startling truth.
We secretly exchanged numbers at the barbecue. After that, we met up a few times. Thomas told me he has more fun with me than with you. Eventually, we got closer, and he decided to leave you. How does it feel, Patricia, losing your partner to someone else? What's that like?
As her words sank in, a storm of emotion surged through me. But before I could express anything, my feelings became a chaotic mess, and tears began to stream down my face.
Oh dear, looks like you're not in any shape to work today. You should leave early. I'll handle the paperwork for you.
Betty picked up my belongings and tossed them at my feet. I wanted to fire back with something, but in my current state, I couldn't. I left in silence, tears falling as I walked out of the office. Later, I heard that Betty announced to the marketing department that her partner was my former one. Everyone was visibly shocked, but since it was a sensitive issue, they couldn't dig any deeper. Gradually, the employees in the marketing department began to keep their distance from me. It seemed like no one knew how to interact with me anymore. I didn't know how to face everyone or what expression to wear while talking to them, so in a way, their distance was a relief. That said, the pain of having my partner taken from me didn't go away, and the reality that Thomas had abandoned me couldn't be changed. All I could do was spend each day crying. It seemed that since the incident with Betty, my tear ducts had completely broken. Even that day, I suddenly felt tears welling up during work and hurriedly left my desk to head to the break room. Someone approached me and spoke.
Patricia, what's wrong?
Steve. I turned around to see Steve, the department manager, who had just returned from an overseas business trip the day before. He had been away for the past 6 months and didn't know anything about the trouble between Betty and me. Desperate to talk to someone, I tearfully explained everything to Steve. I can't take this anymore. Please fire me, I begged him through my tears. Steve thought for a moment before making an unexpected suggestion.
How about a transfer to one of our affiliated companies?
What?
A change of environment might do you some good. You're a talented employee, Patricia. Letting someone like you go would be a big loss for this company. Besides, I don't want to part ways with you like this.
Steve gave me a kind smile and spoke gentle words to comfort me. His kindness touched my heart deeply, and I couldn't help but shed even more tears. Thank you. I really want to leave this place as soon as possible. Please, Steve, make it happen.
All right, I understand. Let's start the process right away.
True to his word, Steve began the transfer process that very day. Thanks to him, I was able to leave the marketing department within a month. I thanked him repeatedly. Thank you so much, Steve. I'll definitely repay this kindness one day.
I'll be counting on you.
Steve sent me off with a smile, and I returned it with one of my own. That's how I left the company I had worked at for many years. 4 years after being transferred to an affiliated company at Steve's recommendation, I found myself returning to the company I had left behind. I never thought I'd end up coming back here. Looking up at the familiar office building, I gave a wry smile. What had felt like a devastating event back then had become a faded scar after 4 years. I could now stand here with a sense of calm, no longer overwhelmed by confusion and tears like I had been. All right, time to go. Steadying my slightly nervous heart, I stepped into the main office building. As I scanned the entrance, searching for the person I needed to meet, I suddenly heard a familiar but unwelcome voice.
Oh, what's the loser doing here?
Hello, Betty. It's been a while. I turned around to see Betty smirking at me. She had looked youthful 4 years ago, but now she seemed a bit older. Well, it's only natural for people to change after 4 years. I'm here for work today.
Work? You, the one who ran away so pathetically 4 years ago. Oh, right, you got transferred to one of our affiliated companies, didn't you?
Yes, that's correct. Though I thought to myself whose fault it was that I had to leave, I replied with a smile. I figured that snapping back would only cause unnecessary trouble. If Betty hadn't changed from how she was 4 years ago, she wouldn't hesitate to cause a scene without caring about who was watching. Ignoring my effort to keep things calm, Betty threw out a provocative remark.
Why did you get transferred to an affiliated company again? Oh, that's right. Because Thomas and I got married, isn't it? You felt so uncomfortable that you ran away from here.
Betty deliberately stated the obvious, as if to rub it in. It seemed her personality had gotten even worse over the past 4 years. I sighed quietly and began thinking about how to get out of this situation. Before I could say anything, someone else stepped in to help.
Hey, long time no see, Patricia. Sorry to keep you waiting.
It's been a while, Steve. I just arrived, so no worries at all. The person who came to my rescue was Steve, the one who had suggested my transfer to the affiliated company. Wearing the same kind smile as he had 4 years ago, Steve stepped between Betty and me.
Oh, Betty. Did you need something from Patricia?
Well, no. I just saw someone I hadn't seen in a long time and thought I would say hi. Is she your guest, Steve?
Betty asked with a suspicious look. Steve responded with his usual smile.
Yes, she's my business partner today.
What? Business partner? But isn't your meeting today with a major corporation? Are you sure you've got the right person? She works for one of our affiliated companies, doesn't she?
Betty looked confused, glancing back and forth between Steve and me. I matched Steve's smile and revealed a certain truth to Betty. I'm actually the business partner from that major corporation. You see, I changed jobs.
What?
Seeing Betty's stunned expression, I couldn't help but think how quickly her facial expressions changed. 4 years ago, at Steve's suggestion, I was transferred to one of our affiliated companies. Working in an environment where no one knew me felt incredibly comfortable, and I was able to make a fresh start. Free from worrying about how others perceive me, I focused on my work and began achieving great results. Perhaps the time I gained from no longer planning a wedding also helped me dedicate myself to work. About 9 months after being transferred, I successfully handled a major project with a prominent corporation.
Patricia, thank you so much for your excellent work on this. I have something I would like to discuss with you. Let me get straight to the point. Would you consider joining our company?
What?
My boss has heard about your work and is very interested in bringing you on board. How about meeting with them to talk it over?
The proposal surprised me, but I was even more delighted to have my skills recognized. To be honest, I wanted to say yes on the spot, but I felt it was important to inform Steve, who had made my transfer possible. Though I worried he might object, I called Steve and explained the situation.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations, Patricia. When are you planning to make the move?
Steve immediately congratulated me upon hearing the news. Smiling, I thanked him for his support. 2 months later, I transferred to the major corporation. Even after switching jobs, I stayed in touch with Steve. Eventually, a project came up where I needed to collaborate with my former company, so I reached out to Steve for assistance.
Thanks to you, Patricia, I've landed a fantastic opportunity to work with a major corporation. I might even have a shot at a good performance review next quarter.
Maybe it's your chance for a promotion. If that happens, I'll be sure to celebrate with you. Steve joked, and I laughed along with him. The only person not smiling was Betty. She probably never imagined that the person she had pushed out of the company 4 years ago would return representing a more prestigious company. To be fair, I hadn't imagined this outcome either back then.
Is that so? That's impressive, Patricia. I never would have thought you'd end up at such a big company.
Betty said, forcing a strained smile as her mouth twitched. I suddenly recalled how Betty had a habit of trying to assert dominance over others. The fact that I had surpassed her was likely a reality she didn't want to acknowledge.
But all you have now is your career, right? I married Thomas and built a happy home. How old are you again? If you keep focusing only on work, you're going to miss your chance to settle down.
Betty's words reeked of desperation, but I responded cheerfully. Oh, I actually got married 2 years ago, so no need to worry about me.
What?
And I had a baby last year. A beautiful baby boy who looks just like his dad. Here, let me show you a picture. I pulled out my phone and showed her the family photo I use as my wallpaper. In the picture, my husband, son, and I were all smiling. Seeing it, Betty's eyes widened as far as they could go. After transferring to a major corporation, I was assigned to the same marketing department as my previous job. That's where I met my husband, who was the department manager. We unexpectedly hit it off and started meeting outside of work, eventually beginning a relationship. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and within these 2 years, we celebrated 2 major milestones: marriage and the birth of our child.
So this is the son I've heard about. He's adorable. And you're right. He looks just like your husband.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you for the baby gift you sent. The toy you picked has become his favorite.
I'm glad to hear that. Actually, my wife chose it.
I stayed in touch with Steve even during my maternity leave, and he kindly sent me both a wedding gift and a baby gift. As Steve and I enthusiastically chatted about children, Betty stood there staring at us in a daze. However, her expression gradually twisted, and with trembling lips, she said this.
I see. So you had a child. Congratulations. But why did you tell Steve and not me? I mean, am your former boss. Don't you think it's a bit rude to leave me out?
Though her words were congratulatory, her face was contorted with anger. Is my happiness really that unbearable for her? I sighed in exasperation and responded, would it really have been appropriate to contact you? I heard you've been having a tough time in your personal life, Betty. I thought reaching out might be a bother.
What did you hear?
That things aren't going well with Thomas. Betty's eyes widened in shock. I knew this because former colleagues from the marketing department had told me. Steve wasn't the only one I kept in touch with after my transfer. After being transferred to the affiliated company, I received messages from my former colleagues. They apologized for not being able to stand up for me, and since then, we've kept in regular contact. Through those exchanges, I learned the details about Betty's current situation. Although Betty married Thomas, her life was far from the happy newlywed image she tried to project. Neither of them was good at housework, and their home had fallen into complete disarray. Betty reportedly insisted that, since she held a higher position at work, Thomas should be the one handling the housework. It seems that someone with a habit of asserting dominance couldn't resist doing the same within their household. Unable to tolerate Betty's attitude, Thomas quickly lost interest in her and started an affair. I was told that their divorce is just a matter of time. Even though Thomas once said things like cheating is the worst, and I would never do something like that, knowing that he's now cheating without hesitation makes me think it's actually a good thing Betty took him from me. If I had married Thomas, I undoubtedly would have been miserable. As I spoke about my current life, Betty's face turned bright red with humiliation and anger. Seeing her like that, I decided to get a little payback. I probably should have warned you, Betty, when you took Thomas from me, that he's terrible at housework. I'm sorry. I was too shocked at the time. But Betty, didn't you live alone for a long time? How is it that you're so bad at housework yourself? Considering everything Betty had put me through, a comment like this was nothing. Honestly, I wanted to retaliate more, but I didn't have the time to waste on her. Well, I will be on my way now. I need to discuss business with Steve.
Betty, instead of standing around here wasting time, why don't you head back to your department and get some work done? Shall we go, Patricia?
Leaving Betty trembling with frustration, we quickly walked away. Betty had lost to me in everything: her personal life, her career, and everything else. But with her pride, she couldn't accept reality and remained standing there, frozen. Later, Steve and I proceeded with our business discussion and successfully advanced to the contract phase. Steve, would it be all right if I stopped by the marketing department to introduce myself? Since we'll be working together, I think it's better if they know about me in advance.
Good idea. Let's go together.
Although it kept in touch with some of the employees, most didn't know where I was or what I'd been up to. I figured it might surprise everyone if they found out about me only after we started working together, so I decided it was better to let them know in advance. Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I smiled as I returned to the marketing department for the first time in 4 years. After a brief introduction and a quick explanation of my current role, the employees initially seemed surprised, but eventually welcomed me with smiles.
I can't believe Patricia ended up at a major corporation.
Oh, and I actually got married.
Patricia, you got married? Congratulations.
4 years ago, I was isolated, with everyone keeping their distance from me. I had felt a little nervous about how this reunion would go, but it turned out there was nothing to worry about. Everyone warmly welcomed the new, changed version of me with smiles.
Doesn't Betty feel like she should apologize to Patricia for what she did?
She's probably upset about losing to Patricia both professionally and personally. Besides, isn't she having trouble with Thomas?
It seemed Betty overheard the whispers from the employees. Her face, already awkward as she stood in a corner of the marketing department, turned red with shame and anger. But having lost to me in every way, Betty couldn't muster a response and simply lowered her head in silence. 2 months later, Betty and Thomas divorced. Thomas, who had been unfaithful, was ordered to pay alimony to Betty, depleting his savings. According to mutual acquaintances, Thomas started asking friends and contacts to lend him money. This behavior caused people to distance themselves from him, leaving him increasingly isolated. Though Betty succeeded in her alimony claim, the employees in the marketing department were now on my side, leaving Betty to experience isolation at work as well. Unable to cope with her loneliness both at work and in her personal life, Betty began approaching any man she could. At one point, she reportedly pressured a new hire so aggressively that his father, a lawyer, nearly sued her for harassment.
We gave her a strict warning, but at this rate, she's likely to face some kind of disciplinary action. She used to be good at her job, but that hasn't been the case in recent years. It's probably better to hand her position as manager to someone more capable.
Steve had also grown tired of Betty and reported the situation to me with an exasperated tone, mixed with a bit of frustration. I responded with a wry smile, thinking to myself that she had brought this upon herself. In hindsight, I was lucky things turned out this way, but Betty had come close to ruining my life. Considering this as her way of paying for what she did, I thought she got off easy. Meanwhile, I was busy balancing my professional responsibilities with raising my child. Steve, look at this picture. The other day, my son did something mischievous.
He's such a handful. It reminds me of when my kids were little.
Taking a moment to chat with Steve amid my hectic work schedule became a quiet source of comfort for me. He was such a good listener that I felt like I could share anything with him. Even 4 years ago, I had found myself telling Steve everything about my situation without realizing it. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be where I am today. Steve, once we wrap up this project, how about hosting a team dinner with the marketing department?
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Smiling, we made plans for the event. Hoping to someday become as reliable and approachable as Steve, I continued to dedicate myself fully to my work.